What will you do, Father? You can no longer hide behind the skirts of Athena.
Athena is dead because of the rage that consumed you, Kratos. What more will you destroy?
The hands of death could not defeat me. The Sisters of Fate could not hold me. And you will not see the end of this day. I will have my revenge!
And have his revenge he certainly did. How you doing, guys, and welcome to a short video I'm doing where I'll be offering my impressions on the brand new God of War game. Now, I have been a huge God of War fan ever since day one, all the way back in 2015 when the very first God of War came out. And I've been hooked on these games ever since. Now, all the games in the series, including the PSP games, have all pretty much been the same. The games are at a fixed camera angle, and the main protagonist Kratos has two swords chained to his wrists, which he uses to cause combos. All the games have pretty much been exactly like this. However, they've all been impressive in their own right, and every single game, including the PSP games, have pushed the console to its absolute limits. These have always been incredible looking games. But all the games have followed pretty much the same premise of the story, and that is the protagonist Kratos was tricked by the God of War into murdering his own wife and daughter. Stricken by grief and no doubt madness, he goes on a murderous rampage to finally get his revenge on the God of War. After he does that, he's promoted to becoming the new God of War himself. However, all the other gods on Mount Olympus are not happy with this, and they decide to trick Kratos into giving up his power so that they can murder him. Kratos, being the super badass he is of course, doesn't take too kindly to this, and comes back from the dead so he can take his revenge on all the gods in Mount Olympus, and put an end to their tyranny once and for all. Now, all the games up until this point have been set in Greek mythology, so you'll see familiar faces like Zeus, Hades, Poseidon. You'll see things like the Minotaur or Gorgons. They've pretty much followed that exact same premise. Until now, the latest game in the series. To say that this game is a huge change in the series would be a massive, massive understatement. In fact, at first glance, you will be forgiven for thinking that this is almost a completely different game from a completely separate franchise. However, it still follows the journey of Kratos. Whereas in the previous games it was set in Greek mythology, they couldn't really do that in this game because by the end of God of War 3, he completely obliterated Mount Olympus and all the gods on it. Greek mythology was dead and over with. Instead, in this game, with Kratos finally getting his revenge, he journeys on, and in this game, it's actually set in Norse mythology, Vikings and whatnot. So, in this game, we'll have gods like Odin, Thor, Loki, and all the other kinds of things in Norse mythology. As well as the story changes, there's also the visual changes, which again have pushed the console to its absolute limits. If you're playing this game on a standard PlayStation 4, you will be playing this game at 1080p at 30 frames per second. However, if you're playing this game on a PlayStation 4 Pro, then you have a choice. You can either play this game at a lower resolution but at 60 frames per second, or you can play this game in 4K but locked down to 30 frames per second. It's your choice. Do you want the better visuals but the slower frames, or would you prefer a more smoother gameplay experience at the cost of graphics? It's your choice. Not to mention, Kratos is sporting what is quite possibly the most epic and awesome beard of all time. So yeah, visually speaking, this is a drop-dead stunning game. But I think it's fair to say, and I'm sure that everybody will agree with this, that without a doubt the biggest change to the series formula is definitely the gameplay itself. Everything has changed about it. Instead of having a fixed camera angle, now what we get is an over-the-shoulder camera angle. And instead of Kratos' iconic blades that are chained to his wrist, instead he's now sporting an awesome axe. which definitely promotes getting up close to the combat as opposed to pulling off combos with the chains. As well as that, Kratos can throw the axe whenever the hell he feels like it, and call it back by the simple press of a button. Now, this axe can be upgraded by various resources that you find throughout the world. You can also equip different armors, which again you can upgrade through various different resources found in the world. Now, the world itself is an open world, however, it is a lot more open than in previous God of War games. In previous God of War games, it was pretty much just a straight path. There's a lot more room for exploration in this game. There's also side missions and optional bosses that you don't have to take on if you don't want to, but doing so will reward you with quite possibly better weapons, stronger equipment, and it's definitely worth exploring. Another big change from the previous games in the series is that in this game, Kratos will always be accompanied by his young son Atreus. Now, some people may be a little bit put off because they don't really like the idea of constantly being followed around by an AI companion. The reason for this is because in a lot of games, the AI companion is completely fucking useless and always ends up messing up. That isn't the case in this game. In fact, the AI companion in this game is just as good as Ellie was in The Last of Us. They never get in the way, you don't have to worry about that. Instead, they can really help you out. Atreus can use his bow and arrow to chip away at enemies and distract them, and he can also, after you've upgraded him of course, jump onto enemies' backs and stun lock them, and this will come in invaluable in later parts of the game. Atreus himself can also be upgraded with different armor, stronger bows, and his own skill tree of his own, so it definitely makes a huge difference in the formula of the games. Now, the story for this game is that after Kratos got his revenge on the gods of Mount Olympus, he moved on. He finally met a wife and they had a son together, Atreus. Unfortunately though, at the start of this game, Kratos' wife has died, and Kratos is left all alone to raise his son in this very, very dangerous world. Now, Kratos doesn't really know how to do that. Pretty much all his life, all he's been focused on is revenge and bloodshed, and now all of a sudden he's responsible for raising a small boy. It's completely alien to him, and this really shows in the opening parts of the game. Kratos is very cold and almost outright nasty to his son, constantly goading him and berating him, and it's not that he doesn't love his son, because he truly does. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't know how to be a father. And that's pretty much the main aspect of the story of this game. As the story goes on, Kratos will more and more learn to open up to his son. He will more and more learn how to be a father, to raise his son. Now, the basic story of this game is that Kratos and Atreus want to fulfill the last wish of the woman in their lives by spreading her ashes in the highest point in the mountains. Of course, to get to the highest point in the mountains is a very long and very dangerous journey, full of classic mythical creatures all throughout Norse mythology, and a few gods as well. But I'm not going to mention too much about them because I'm not going to give any spoilers away. But anyway, during this journey, it's a fantastic chance for Kratos and Atreus to get closer towards each other. At the beginning of the game, they're pretty much alien to each other. It's almost like they don't want to spend their time with each other. But as the game progresses and they're forced to interact more and more, they do get closer and closer, and it's a really powerful and emotional journey. Of course, to get there, they're going to have to go through a lot of battles, and luckily, the gameplay is as fun as it gets in this game. Now, this game has been getting rave reviews. 10 out of 10s, 5 stars, pretty much the highest that anyone could come up with, and it's not hard to see why. Everything about this game is just mind-blowing. Everything from the visuals to the gameplay, the soundtrack, the actual acting. It's all just incredible. It definitely is a journey that's worth going through, and if you own a PlayStation 4, I cannot recommend this game strongly enough. You will definitely enjoy your time here. If there was an Oscars ceremony for video games, I think it's safe to say that this game would clean house, pretty much take in as many trophies as it could get its hand on, and I really don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. It is that damn good. A lot of people are already saying that this is not only Game of the Year, but Game of an entire generation, and I can definitely understand why people are saying that. So anyway guys, I'm going to end the video here. I cannot recommend this game strongly enough. If I had to score it out of 10, I would give it a fucking 10 out of 10, no problem. It is that impressive. So anyway guys, if you do get this game, I really hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time guys.